Hi there, this is James Tripp and welcome to this video, which is the third video in the run-up to the online Freestyle Mindshifters Toolkit training. This video is about exploring trance functionality. Now, if you watched the first video in this series, which I hope you did, I talked about the trance and transcendence model there, and I've talked about this in other places. I've shared other videos. If you've got Transforming Realities with the Tetralemma, you know I went deep into the trance and transcendence model there. But it's basically the idea that we live our lives through trances. We live our lives through trances. And trances are automated experiential response sets, behavioral sets that come about when certain conditions come together. And there's some freedom within those trances. You know, some trances have more freedom with them, others have less. But we basically engage with the world through these trances that much of the time got programmed a long time back. So it means that our sense of humour is as it is. We laugh at the same kinds of jokes. That's a kind of a trance, our humour trance. It's triggered by the same kinds of things. The sort of things that create fear in us tend to be the same. You know, if we procrastinate, we'll procrastinate in certain contexts. That procrastination is a trance. It's an automated set of responses. So we engage with the world through trances. And this is the way that we work, and it's the way we need to be. High performance states of trances and less useful states of trances like you know, phobias, depression, rages. These things can be trances, withdrawing, all sorts of things. So I talked about that in video 1. Now here's the thing, much of from this conceptualization, when people want to change something, when they hire you to help them change, or they're a friend, they'd like you to help them change, what they're often wanting to change is a trance. Okay, sometimes they might just want advice or talking through something, but oftentimes if it's a repeated chronic thing, every time this happens I do this, why do I keep doing this, anything like this, we're dealing with a trance here and we want to change it. And if somebody gets to a point where they outgrow a trance and they start to see that the trance they're running is not supporting them in living the life they want to live, it can just look like a bad thing. It looks like a bad thing. It looks like a dysfunctional trance. But the truth is, we create all of our trances and we create all of them as solutions to problems. So in a sense, they all have a functionality. They all have a reason for running. They all have a structure, and part of the structure is the reason for running, is the solution that they are. Now, this is an important thing to be aware of, because if we don't understand what the function of the trance is, there are a number of problems with that. Number one, we're only going to see it as dysfunctional, so we're going to hate on it all the time. Now, this is a really important thing, because one of the keys to effective change work is through creating the right kind of environment within a person that change can happen. This means facilitating between different aspects of self in a person what I call healthy transformative relationships, generative relationships. When a person's hating on aspects of themselves, right, when they're in struggle, they end up just fighting in these destructive relationships with aspects of themselves. You cannot create new solutions and generate new ways of being from destructive, toxic internal relationships. So if somebody sees something they do, and they will probably then track it up to the level of identity. I am this, I am weak. Why are you weak? Because of this. And they'll talk about a trance, and that starts to pollute what I call their transcendent self as well, and pollute their self-image. It's not a good thing. So if somebody can come to see the functionality of their trance, if they can come to see that it is a creative solution, and they can come to relate to that aspect of self that's created to it with understanding and compassion rather than with contempt, loathing and hate, you know, it makes a big difference. It really changes things around. So exploring the functionality of trance is a really good thing, because it creates a shift in the internal relationships, and it also uncovers material that the generative self can now use to create new and better adapted solutions. For generative self, if you prefer an Ericksonian angle, you can think of the unconscious mind, you know, the power, the generative power within the unconscious mind. So how do we do it? How do we uncover the functionality of the trance, what it's for, what it is that the trance is intended to do, what it is that it's intended to achieve. One of the classic ways of doing this is to do it within a 6-step reframe format from NLP, where you get someone in communication with a part and then you say, go ahead and ask that part what it wants to achieve for you that's positive by doing X, Y, and Z. I don't find that an especially useful way to go. It can work, but here's the issue with that. What you're doing if you ask a part, now what a part is, if we do parts work, what a part essentially is a dissociated trance, right? We dissociate, or we say, you know, we turn it into a part so we can talk about it. The part of me that does X, whereas the trance is X, right? Now, there's a value to dissociating. There's a value to dissociating. In the Freestyle Mindshifter's Toolkit, I'm going to talk about managing the quality of the dissociation, because I think in classic parts work there's a problem. It's too cold, it's too distant, it's too separating. We want to dissociate while retaining warmth and connection with the aspect of self that we're working with, and keep it within a community of who we are. So we don't want to like dissociate too much and push apart too far away, because that's not really creating a closer, warmer relationship with that aspect of self, which is what we want to do. So I'm not going to talk about that right here. I'm going to talk about a different way of eliciting the trance functionality, which is sometimes called positive intention or secondary gain or whatever. And the way that I like to do it is I like to associate somebody into the trance. I like to get them into it. So I like to bring up a context. I'll say, you know, when was the last time this happened? Where were you? What was the first thing that happened just before this occurred? And I'll get them into it and I'll talk them through it. Then when they're inside of it, you see, because here's the thing, I may have said this before, trances are identities when we're had by them. When we're had by them, everything else about who we are goes away. So in that moment, that becomes the totality of who we are. In effect, it isn't really the totality of who we are, but experientially and response-wise, it becomes the totality of who we are. We connect into it. We connect into the state that the knowledge is contained within. If we ask from the outside, we have to create this distant thread of connection. But once someone's in the trance they're experiencing, they're fully in there, then you can ask them directly, what is it that you need right now? What is it that you want? You can ask a question like that. You can ask a question. A lot of people are afraid of this one, but I like to ask this one, particularly if there's a clearly, you know, an adrenal response. It's a fear-based thing. What is it that you fear right now? What is it that you fear might happen if you didn't do this? Okay, so you can ask questions of the person you. And what you will get, the answer that you will get isn't really what they want, but it's what they, as shaped by the trance, wants. And this reveals the functionality of the trance, the intention of the trance. Okay, so it might be, let me give you a personal example. Let me give you a personal example of this. My background is self-development stuff, personal change, self-change. Big issue for me going back a long time ago was constant anxiety and constant fear in many forms. It's how I lived my life. I had night terrors as a kid, you know, constantly adrenal state. One of the big things, the big issues for me as I got into my teenage years and older, particularly when I left school and had to meet new people, was social anxiety. I had terrible social anxiety. It would just overwhelm me and I would get all wrapped up in my head and it would be horrible and I just wanted to escape. So I fixed it back then with drinking and stuff before I knew how to fix it in more elegant ways, and ultimately I ended up transforming it and it disappeared and it was gone. Or so I thought, you know, because it had largely gone, and in contrast there was no problem compared to how it used to be. But something I recognized recently, just a few months ago, when I've been out, you know, I'm traveling the world with my family at the moment, when we were in Australia, and I'm meeting a lot of new people, and I noticed when I was meeting new people, although I'm nothing like I used to be, there's still a moment I found, a micro moment, where I would just withdraw, what I came to call a micro withdrawal, like a little mini trance, just a moment. And it wasn't like a big deal. It was just like a little moment where the brakes went on, a little moment where, and I noticed it. It's probably been there for a long time. It's a residue of an old trance, but it was suddenly I could see it, and I thought to myself, well, that's an interesting thing, you see, because I know better than to go, oh no, and start hating on it and thinking there's something wrong. That is not bringing transformative energies to bear upon it. So curiosity is what I brought to bear. It's a powerful transformative energy. And I noticed this little mini trance, you know, that came up. So what I did is I recreated the trance in myself. Actually, I noticed it live in real time. And I asked myself, what is it that I want right now? And the answer was simple. It was to hide. That was the answer, to hide. I don't need to go deeper than that. I just got what some people call the positive intention of that little micro trance. It's to hide. I want to hide in that moment. Isn't that a curious thing? So I got the intention whilst in the trance, or at least enough in the trance. I couldn't have been completely in the trance, because if I was completely in the trance, I wouldn't have had the resources to ask the question. But enough in the trance, enough connected into the trance to ask the question, what is it that I want? The answer is, I want to hide. That's useful. That's good to know. Particularly if I can be cool with that and go, well, isn't that an interesting thing? And I'm sure that there are times and there are places where all human beings, everyone wants to hide. It's an archetypical energy wanting to hide. I know that. Okay? Now, I also know that if I try and hate on that part, if I try and force it to be different, if I try and do any of that, it's not going to do anything. So what I want to do is I want to use that knowledge and I want to bring it into a field of broader intelligence of who I am beyond that. So this is how I did it. Once I got the associated intention, then I dissociate. There's an aspect of me that wants to hide, right? When I'm inside of the trance, that's the totality of who I am. So I say, I want to hide. But actually, when I'm dissociated, I can see there is an aspect of me that wants to hide. This is trance and transcendent self. From the perspective of the transcendent self, there is an aspect of me that wants to hide. When I'm inside the trance, I want to hide. Okay, see the difference? This is really key. So I'm out there and I'm in the transcendent self now, and I'm bringing the energy of curiosity to bear. Isn't that interesting? There it is. Now, I made a rule that every time this part showed up, every time this trance flashed up, I would immediately dissociate. Instead of being had by the trance, I would immediately dissociate. And I would go, there it is. There's that part that wants to hide, that aspect of me that wants to hide. Okay? And there is an aspect of me, a part of me that wants to connect. Okay? An aspect of me that wants to connect. Now this is a really key thing, because what I'm doing here with this maneuver, and I'm talking about this from my own personal experience because it's easy to talk about, but this is the kind of maneuver I'll facilitate with clients as well. Because when I have the aspect of me that wants to hide, and I have the aspect of me that wants to connect, and I'm still neither of those, I'm in my transcendent self, my broader intelligence, which means I have access to my generative faculty. I can just hold them in that field of broader intelligence. There's an aspect of me that wants to hide, and there is an aspect of me that wants to connect. Now, interestingly, I don't have to do anything in that moment, but just let it sit. So allegedly, Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, said something along the lines of the key to enlightenment lies, or the surest path to enlightenment lies in the ability to hold two opposing truths within the mind at one time until a higher order emerges. And this is how the generative faculty works. If your intention is set that you want something different, you're not going to try and fascistically impose something different. You're just going to set the conditions and you're going to set the intention. And then through this process of sitting with these two opposing aspects of self, very rapidly for me, I only had to do this a few times, and a new higher level of, a new trance emerged. A new trance. Not because I forced one through, but because I created the conditions to allow the generative faculty within, the deeper intelligence within me that lies outside of conscious operation to do the work it needed to do. But the conscious part of myself had to facilitate the process and set it up. So this is an example of what I meant when I said part one of the Mindshifter's map, not part one, the first thing I covered, the explore current trance. If you do it within the right with the right understanding and bring the right kind of consciousness to bear upon it, this broader intelligence from the transcendent self, often just doing the exploration with the appropriate kinds of intentions and transformative energies and awareness is all that it takes for a new possibility, a new behavioral set and a new response set to emerge. Now, the example I've just given you has gone slightly beyond that because it's gone to the other part, which is access resource. Because the part of me that wants to connect out is a resource in this respect. It already exists. There is a part of me that wants to connect out. If there wasn't a part of me that wanted to connect out, then the part of me that wanted to hide wouldn't be flagged as an issue. Do you see what I mean? So that part has to exist. That aspect of self has to exist. And I never associated into that aspect consciously. I may have done fleetingly. It could have been a useful thing to do. But it's the holding of the two. Note that I'm not swishing one out and trying to replace it with the other. I'm not making a conscious decision that this part is higher value than that part. I'm honoring them both. I'm respecting them both. I'm holding them within a broader transformative field. Now, this little piece of process that I've just talked about here is really powerful. And actually, it's kind of encoded into other patterns. If you look at the NLP 6-step reframe, if you look beneath the surface script that often gets given, and you start looking at what's going on, a lot of this stuff's in here about managing relationships between aspects of self, creating transformative relationships, bringing what I call transformative energies to bear. That's attitudes, feelings that can exist between different aspects of self and around different aspects of self. Often these things are encoded into regular NLP patterns and stuff like that, but people miss them and they skim over the surface because they're just following the script or they're just following the step in the process and they're not getting deep into what that step is really trying to achieve, what the potential within that step is. So that's one idea, and I hope through that illustration that that's sparking some things off inside of your mind. Whether or not you have already booked onto the Freestyle Mindshifter's Toolkit, or whether or not you intend to do it, if you work with people to help them make changes, keep this idea in mind. Keep this idea here in mind. Why it's useful to get the functionality. And then what we do when we get that functionality, how do we use that to inform the broader intelligence of the system? Not to make some conscious decision about what needs to happen, but how the emergent trance functionality or positive intention or whatever you want to do it can now inform the broader intelligence which has within it the capacity to create new solutions. Because this is how we work. This is how we work. This is how we formed the trances originally. What we're doing here in the process I've described is utilizing processes we use unconsciously to create new solutions anyway. It's one of the great things I believe in. I do not believe that hypnosis, NLP, anything like that has any magic that enables us to bypass our inherent learning, changing and growing capacities. All that we can do is utilize our inherent learning, changing and growing capacities to effectively explore new possibilities for being. And the way we will select those new possibilities for being and refine those new possibilities for being is a non-linear process. It is an emergent process. It always is. This is one of the problems with a lot of NLP processes, hypnosis scripts, is it acts like there's a linear process, and there isn't. It's always a non-linear process. And this is why with the Mindshifter's map, incidentally, I got asked a question as to whether there was a particular order and sequence as to when we did the particular bits and whether that would be explained. And there isn't, because we revisit and revisit. We go through iterative cycles, visiting different points on the mind shifter's map, all the time within the field of broader intelligence that is paying deep attention and creating the actual new, functional, well-adapted ways of being that are going to be emerging for the process and changing the person's life that you're working with. So, love to see you on the Freestyle Mindshifters Toolkit. If you've not joined already, please be aware that as this goes out, it's beginning on the 16th of this month, which is a Thursday the 16th, and you've got, I think it's a 1/3 discount, should know that, but check it out. You've got a 1/3 discount if you book on before the start. Be aware of that. When the start date comes up, the price goes up. And incidentally, this will not be available afterwards. So don't think that you can hang back and buy this in 2 months' time. This is available for the people who are on it. If you're on it, you'll get the recordings, you get to participate, you get to ask the questions. If you are not on it, you miss it. You can join at any point during the process because there'll be recordings of the web classes that they've already been. But after the training is finished, it's closed. Okay? I just want to make that absolutely clear, just in case there are people out there going, James is going to put this out as a recording afterwards. I am not. You are either a participant in the process, either live or, there are different levels of participation available, but if you miss it, you miss it. So if you want to get on this, please do take action now and jump on board, and I'd love to have you in with the group. Take care.